Welcome to Bald Guy DIY. In this video, I'm going to answer the question you may have asked yourself, or maybe not. Is it possible to cook on a 3D printer? So if you have a heated build plate on your 3D printer, you may have wondered if there's any other uses for it besides making printed plastic parts. Or maybe you've never thought that, maybe it's just me. But I did start to wonder, how high could the build plate temperature go, and would it be hot enough that you could actually cook something on it? Now, I use a Makergear M2 3D printer, and so I checked the manufacturer's specs, and it said that it could go 110 degrees Celsius and hotter. I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to see just how hot it could go, and if I could actually cook something with it. The old, is it hot enough to fry an egg on a sidewalk? Well, we're gonna find out. Is it hot enough to fry an egg on a 3D printer? I've got a few foods in mind. I'm going to test them out, see if they can be cooked, and how long it might take to do that. I'm not expecting that there's any way this is going to actually replace, an oven or microwave or anything like that. I thought it would be a fun experiment to try if you can actually cook something with the 3D printer and how it would taste. Now, before I show you the results, I really wanted to point out the safety factors and the things that you need to consider before attempting something like this yourself. For one thing, you want to make sure that you clean the build plate really well. We don't want any traces of the plastic itself that's going to continue to vaporize and contaminate the food. Also, you really don't want to have any of the adhesives that you might be using to make your print stick to the bed. For me, I use aerosol hairspray, so obviously I don't want that in the food either. Make sure it's really nice and clean. And for the sake of this experiment, I'm not going to use the extruders at all. I'm just going to use the temperature of the build plate. Now, in order to figure out how hot I could go, I ran my build plate cranked up as high as I could. I simply created a new setting, a new type of material in Octoprint called cooking, and I set that as 150 degrees Celsius. After setting the preheat temperature to cooking, 150 degrees Celsius, I then watched the temperature graph and saw if it actually reached 150. Now, I could only get about 125 degrees Celsius, without anything on the build plate. If I put a foil pan on top of the build plate, I could raise the temperature to about 145 degrees Celsius. So that's the most that I had to work with. I checked out online what food should cook at, and it seems like we're gonna get some good results. I'm gonna try 3 different things: an egg, a grilled cheese sandwich, and a little dessert. Let's get started. Before you try this on your own printer, you definitely want to check with the manufacturer specs. Make sure your build plate is rated for the temperature that you're going to try to achieve, and that the duty cycle of the printer isn't going to be exceeded by trying this kind of experiment. But with those things in mind, I take no responsibility for your printer and its safety as you try this yourself. I've already done it, so there's no need for you to try it. I definitely recommend that you would check the manufacturer's specs for your 3D printer and make sure that the build plate can actually go to the temperature that you'd want to try cooking at. Otherwise, I don't recommend it, and I take no responsibility whatsoever if you wreck your 3D printer. I'll just show you what I did on my own. The first thing I'm going to make here is an egg, and I don't want to put the egg directly onto the build plate, so I'm going to create a little pan, so to speak, out of aluminum foil just by rolling up the edges and making a nice surface for the egg to rest in. That way it won't drip off. And after that's done, I'm just going to spray it with cooking spray. I allowed the build plate to preheat for half an hour to 45 minutes, and then I'm going to crack an egg on here and add some salt and pepper and let it go. As you can see here, the white of the egg, or the clear part of the egg, starts to turn white as it cooks, and it starts to look like you would expect an egg to look. I wasn't able to spare the yolk, so it's kind of running out everywhere nice and thin, instead of the way a normal fried egg would look, but it is frying here pretty well. There's no sizzling or popping like you would expect from a frying pan, which gets much hotter, but you can see that it is turning white, meaning that the proteins inside the egg are cooking. And over time, it took about half an hour, but it finally was ready to test out. It was a little dry because I probably left it a little long, but after eating it up, it was pretty tasty. Next thing I'm going to make here is a grilled cheese sandwich. I start by buttering one side of the bread, putting that face down onto the build plate with just some aluminum foil in the way, and then I'm going to add some marble cheese and put another piece of buttered bread on top. I did 15 minutes aside. Flipping it over, you can see that the first side is a nice golden brown, and now the second side you can see the whole thing reduce quite a bit as the cheese melts and the bread does toast.
Turned out quite nicely. As you can see, the nice golden brown texture, cheese dripping on the sides. And then as I cut it open at the end, you can see here a very nice gooey center and looks like a perfectly done grilled cheese sandwich, and it tasted delicious. Last thing I'm going to make is some chocolate chip cookies. My wife mixed up the batter and I'm going to place 6 of them on the build plate. Only after I did this and checked it a while later did I realize that the build plate had indeed turned off. I'm not sure if that was because it timed out or because of a duty cycle issue, but I was able to preheat it again for another half hour to 45 minutes, and then I put the cookies back on and let them cook for about 20 minutes on the first side. Because it's not an oven that's maintaining the heat all the way around, these are more like fried cookies than baked cookies. But you can see here, the top part of it doesn't really change much, but after a while I was able to flip them over and have a brown side on the top and then the remaining side to be browned as they cooked as well. Not the normal way of doing cookies, but if you do like kind of that outer crust that forms on the bottom of the cookie, here you're getting double that and sort of made almost like pancake style instead of typical baked cookies. But the consistency of the inside was nice and gooey, the chocolate chips melting, and not the dough gooey, but the chocolate chips nice and gooey, and the whole thing just nice and soft. I did also try popping popcorn, and I had looked online and found that the ideal minimum temperature for popping popcorn around 150 degrees Celsius. I tried it, but even though I left it for over an hour, I couldn't get a single kernel to pop. It tasted pretty good, all things considered.
So now you know, with some creativity and more importantly some patience, you could make breakfast, lunch, and dessert on your very own 3D printer. Now, there's no way my wife's going to be ditching her Instant Pot for the 3D printer anytime soon, but it is an interesting experiment. Of course, any heat source is probably going to cook something. Maybe I'll try cooking something on a light bulb next. It does work. It's a good proof of concept, and it was kind of fun checking it out and seeing if it would work. It takes about half an hour to cook something that normally would take 5 or 10 minutes, but the end result was pretty tasty. The consistency was good, especially with the grilled cheese sandwich. And in a pinch, maybe if all your other cooking appliances disappear, or if all you have in your dorm room or bedroom is a 3D printer, you could make some double duty. When it's not printing parts, it could be cooking food. Remember, as always, keep it clean and make sure that you're not going to be putting contaminants into your food. It's really important to keep things food safe. I hope you found this video to be interesting, and if you're going to try it yourself, let me know in the comments what kinds of things you're going to cook up. Or if you've got ideas of things that I should try next, let me know. And if I've got some time, I might give it a shot myself and make a video about it. Let us know in the comments also if you've got other ideas for projects or what you're working on in this time of quarantine when it seems like so much of the world is shut down. There's lots of creativity to still be expressed. I hope there's some way you can take inspiration from these videos, not just to entertain yourself, but to find some way in repurposing some other gadget in your life and maybe get a second use out of it. If you enjoy these videos, please consider subscribing and check back every week as we post a new video. Send me an email or follow me on Twitter. The details are in the description. And until next time, in all your DIY projects, whatever you're cooking up, don't be afraid to be bolder.